This boy's name is Mr. Jazz Hands. As the only Slod cultist in a Chaos warband, he gets really lonely, but today, the Froggy family gets just a bit bigger. For those who have been with the channel for a while, you're probably already aware of my Chaos warband, the Brothers Paradox. Along with that, you've probably seen my previous forays into the world of scratch building my own miniatures. While the final quality of the product can be argued either way, every time I get to do something more freeform like this, I always have a ton of fun. Even after finishing my last scratch build, my Chaos Hellbrute, I just really wanted to make another mini. In particular a Chaos spawn, due to how freeform the whole thing can be, you know? This feeling was further exacerbated by the Chaos Spawn scratch builds of another follower of the Ruinous Powers on YouTube here, called Monsters and Whatnot. Go give him a watch, he makes really good stuff. It wasn't until Trent at Miscast Terrain put out a video announcing that he and his friends were hosting an event they run called Monster Mash. This would be the 3rd year they ran it, and this was definitely the chance to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. For those unaware, Miscast Monster Mash is an event where you draw random cards from a pile of cards that he and his friends set up that have a bunch of different bits and bobs and parts and thingamawudgets that are supposed to inspire you to make a creature of sorts, whether it be a miniature or a drawing or painting or song or whatever. There's no right way to go about your creature, it's just a really fun way to get creative juices flowing. This is the 3rd year that Monster Mash has been held, and with the new year comes a new deck of cards. Or in my case, a YouTube video that you can pause and pick a frame out of because, you know, my printer's busted. With no real guidelines to go in, I just decided to pick 10 random cards and pull what I want from that selection. 2 of them are both related to eyeballs though, so instead of redrawing a card, I decided to lean into 2 different kind of eyeballs. I don't know, redrawing a new card just kind of felt like cheating, I can't explain it. The only thing I knew at my initial glance of my pile of cards that it was definitely going to be based on some kind of frog. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with the frog base of the miniature until I was just browsing around and stumbled into this sculpt called Garum, the Toad Devil, by Comet Lord Miniatures. It immediately caught my eye, and I felt kind of bad knowing that if I got it, I'd cut it up to hell and back for my build, but it was just so goddamn cool, I got over it real quick. I also wanted to implement the crane backhoe arm thing here in another card. At a glance, it looks kind of orky to me, so I went to Thingiverse and found a nice file for a standalone power claw, and used it pretty much as is, although I did turn the pinchy hand part in Mesh Mixer 90 degrees, or 45, I can numbers. After downloading the files for the Toad Devil, I imported them into Chitubox just to see how big they were, and for some reason, he was fucking massive. To solve this issue, I took the complete model and downloaded the STL for a 50mm base. I loaded them both in the Chitubox, and from there I scaled the whole model down till it looked about right on the 50mm base. I ended up going with 65%. Afterwards, I could take that 65 and import the STLs for each piece of the Toad Devil individually and just scale them down to that size. From there, it was just finding a good orientation and slogging through the support application process. Some people get mileage out of auto supports, but I've never had a model work with auto supports, so I do all of mine manually. Now you may be thinking, John, isn't placing every support by hand mind-numbingly boring? And you'd be right. However, I had a bit of guidance as the Toad Devil came with a bunch of pre-supported files as well, so I loaded those in the Chitubox and used that to kind of cheat on the orientation and the major parts that needed supports. Actually laying the supports down, obviously took forever, but the setup was a lot faster with this method. And there you go, one Toad Devil missing an arm, fully supported. The Power Claw didn't fit on the build plate alongside it. Well, it could have fit, but with really squeezing in there, and I didn't want the bases overlapping too much because I didn't want it to cause a lot of suction on the FEP film. Is it FEP? Regardless, I set up a second build plate with the power claw and some bits and bobs that for some future conversions. Then it was just an afternoon of resin printing. When all that was done, I was left with some resin parts for the Toad Devil, which turned out super well. I did end up taking a disc cutter on a Dremel to the stump of his left shoulder to make room for the power claw. If I thought ahead, I probably could have made a cleaner cut in Mesh Mixer, but I didn't fret too much. I started assembling the Toad Devil and went to address a small problem with my power claw. I'm not sure why or how, but some of my supports seem to have failed on the power claw print and made this weird ass zigzag claw. I have no goddamn idea what happened, but it was an easy fix. I took some sandwich styrene sheets and carved out new claws for the end of the arm and just stuck them on with some gel superglue. With the base of the body done, I turned to the next card, the skull. I debated on using one giant skull from the GW kit as a pauldron of sorts when I noticed two circular buckles on his loincloth. I decided to scrape those flat and mount two human skulls on each side. I like it way more than a skull pauldron here. I'm glad I went with this route instead. Next card was the spindly arm, or spindly leg, spindly whatever the hell it is. I took an old Gene Stealer arm and repositioned the hand to a downward position and stuck it onto the side of the torso as a smaller third arm of sorts. After that, I take a quick second to stuff the mouth with a wad of scrunched up paper soaked in superglue. But John, I hear you ask, why the hell are you gagging your model with wads of paper? Well, my dear viewer, because this mouth is no longer a mouth. With a big wad of green stuff, I began sculpting the new main feature of the face, a giant eye where the mouth used to be. Looking in the mouth, I just really wanted to do something in there, and I figured I have two eyeball cards, so why not use one of those as a giant eye, you know? The paper wad is just to help me use less green stuff. And when combining the giant eye mouth with another card, the wires, coming out of the dude's eyes, well, the old eyes, I think it ends up making a face that's just super unique. In my opinion, 10 out of 10. As previously stated, I had drawn two cards related to eyeballs, so using my own Hellbrute as an inspiration, I decided to cover the Chaos Spawn in eyeballs as well. Not only do I think it just looks really fucking cool, but I think it'll help tie in the model to models already in my army, especially since they're both demonic. I embed the eyeballs and the wires into another card that I kind of got like warped flesh vibes from to help unify all the elements together and make it look like one solid body. Speaking of all the elements together, let's talk about the one I forgot to record, the facial hair. As funny as it'd be having Gandalf the giant toad in my army, I decided to kind of reinterpret the facial hair as like three tongues coming out from underneath the eyeball. Like instead of facial hair, it's like wispy little tendril tongues. Not only did this let me squeeze in another card into the build, it kind of keeps with the theme of my Hellbrute, which also has multiple tongues all over it. I'm sorry I forgot to record it, but trust me, you'll see it in a bit. With most of the sculpting done from here, I quickly slapped together a base for my Chaos Spawn. 4 pieces of styrene that, when painted, will match the black and white marble scheme of the rest of my army. After the base is done, I quickly prime them up. I won't get too heavy into the details as I'm definitely not the best painter, but here's an overview. I wanted the power claw to look rusted as hell, like it was some kind of old piece of equipment they just grafted onto this thing. For that, I used the same recipe that I used on my rusty billboard. I really like how it came out and it was easy to do, so I decided to, just do it again. I went with black up to a gray highlight for the skin in general, because I wanted him to kind of match Mr. Jazz Hands, so they looked more, related. Seeing that my army has a general theme of magenta or pink energy, I decided to paint a few of the horns around his body in the same energy color. My logic is the bone-colored horns are just regular old horns, while the magenta ones are maybe either infused with like warp energy or maybe some kind of crystal lodged into it. I don't know. The specifics aren't too important, but it helps add some color and, it's a Chaos Spawn. It could be like anything. When painting the eyes on my Hellbrute, I went with various kinds of animal eyes. Of course human, but we had like cat, goat, one of them was a little mouth that just kind of like bit your hand when you handled the model. And I had planned on going with a theme for these eyes in the form of like rare eye defects or mutations or eye diseases. But as I started mapping out the eyes with a little bit of a Gundam marker, I kind of ended up liking the smaller iris in general. It gives me kind of a anime villain vibe. So instead of all the mismatched eyes, I decided to just go with a one eye style for now. I realize it might be a little underwhelming, but I kind of like it as is, and if I ever change my mind in the future, I can just paint some white over it and draw some new eyes. After all that, I cut the pins coming out of his feet, attached them to the base, and varnished them. My Monster Mash 3 Chaos Spawn was all done. So there's the completed Chaos Spawn. I hope you're enjoying looking at it as much as I had fun making it. But anyways, the Monster Mash process was really enjoyable. I may honestly use it in the future if I'm lacking ideas, or maybe to supplement some kind of other scratch build. Either way, thank you to Mr. Miscast for the open invitation to this year's Monster Mash. I've been watching his channel since the first season of Terrain that he did, and it's really cool to see how he's grown so much since. He seems really sincere and laid back, and his go-with-the-flow style of things is really refreshing in a sea of try-hard clickbait YouTubers. If you've never watched his videos, which I would be surprised you haven't so far, honestly, go give him a watch. He's very charming. This build was really fun, and I hope there's an open Monster Mash next year as well. I don't know if this counts as a Halloween video for this year, but I try not to fret too much about seasonal holiday videos. Things come along when they come along, I don't try to force it. That being said, I'm not really sure what my next project is. I have some recast Space Marines coming in the mail, and I may kit bash some characters for the Tua Dadanan, my Space Marine army, but I'm not sure. I've also got some things in the pipeline for a kill team and possibly another big project, but I'm really not in a rush to start on that. I'm just kind of waiting for the right time to jump on that train. There's a lot of options on my table, it's just a matter of finding one that appeals to me. But for now, thank you for watching my Monster Mash entry, and as they say over on Mixcast, okay, bye!